I'm Elena, 25, and last Christmas turned my entire life upside down. For as long as I can remember, I've lived in the shadow of my flawless younger sister, Lila. Somehow, no matter what I did, I never seemed to measure up in my parents' eyes. That Christmas morning, Lila tore open a small envelope to find first-class tickets to Europe, squealing like a kid on a roller coaster. My turn came next. I peeled back shiny silver wrapping to reveal a book titled How to Become an Adult. The sting of humiliation burned hot for a moment, but almost immediately, something in me shifted. Fine. If my parents thought I needed to grow up, I would, just not the way they imagined. In my case, it just meant I got front row seats to watch Lila collect achievement after achievement, while my own efforts blended into the background. When she was in second grade, Lila was doing high school math. I, at the same age, was still struggling to remember my times tables. The first time I managed to squeak out hot cross buns on my recorder after weeks of practice, Lila, only 9 at the time, was performing Beethoven's sonatas on the grand piano our parents had just happened to buy for her. In New York was practically a shrine to her accomplishments. Medals, certificates, trophies polished to a gleam on the mantle and living room shelves. My meager awards lived in drawers or dusty corners. Richard and Elaine never outright compared us, but they didn't have to. I could see it in their faces, the spark in their eyes when Lila spoke about her latest achievement versus the polite, "That's nice, sweetie," when I shared my own. When I came home, thrilled about a B+ in a tough economics class, they nodded. When Lila announced she'd been chosen for a national robotics competition, dinner plans were canceled so we could celebrate at her favorite steakhouse. At 14, I got a planner and highlighters so I could be more organized. Lila, at 11, unwrapped her very own MacBook because she had such potential with her coding club. On my 16th birthday, I got driving lessons and a paperback on car maintenance. Lila got a DSLR camera because she had an artistic eye. I had stopped hoping for equal treatment. I chose an accounting major at SUNY Albany, while Lila got a full ride to Stanford. My parents helped me hunt down a cheap apartment with a roommate, while making regular trips to California to wine and dine with Lila and her professors. Lila graduated with honors, stepped straight into an international consultancy, and was soon racking up air miles to London, Tokyo, and Dubai. A beige-walled one-bedroom was fine. Rent was paid, I had a small circle of friends, and my work was stable, if monotonous. Fridays meant awkward office birthday songs over supermarket cupcakes. Dating was on and off, never serious. On paper, inside, I felt like I was treading water, waiting for something I couldn't name. My parents' weekly career suggestion texts didn't help. Articles on MBAs, stories of someone's niece making manager before 30, constant reminders that there were bigger things I could be aiming for. Lila, now 22, had just been promoted and was splitting her time between New York, Paris, and Singapore. At the grocery store, my parents would beam to anyone within earshot. "Our Lila is in Singapore this month leading a project." If I happened to be there, they'd tack on, "And Elena's doing well too, very reliable job in accounting." As Christmas approached, I braced for the familiar show. Lila had already hinted over the phone about big news to share during the holidays. I packed gifts, sweater for Mom, a golf book for Dad, a brand-name scarf for Lila that I really couldn't afford, and headed to Brookhaven on Christmas Eve. I pulled into the driveway just as a rideshare dropped Lila off. She looked effortlessly put together in a camel wool coat I'd seen in a fashion spread. We exchanged brief hugs and stepped inside, where Mom and Dad were waiting with mugs of hot chocolate. The evening went as expected. Lila holding court about her clients, her travels, her insider restaurant recommendations. I mentioned a new filing system I'd set up at work. The conversation floated right back to her latest Tokyo project. That night in my childhood bedroom, surrounded by my old participation certificates and a few plush toys, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering, again, if I'd ever stop feeling like the lesser daughter. Morning arrived with the usual ceremony, twinkling lights on the tree, coffee brewing, and a stack of wrapped gifts waiting to be opened. Mom handed Lila a red ribboned envelope first. "This one's for you, sweetheart." At the contents, gasped and squealed. "First-class tickets to Europe? Are you serious?" She leapt up to hug them both. This is amazing! I've been wanting to visit our Paris office, and now I can swing by Rome and Barcelona too. Dad grinned proudly. You've worked so hard this year. You deserve to see the world. Then Mom turned to me with a neatly wrapped rectangular package. And this is for you, Elena. Tried to manage my expectations as I peeled away the paper. Inside was a bright yellow book with bold black type. How to Become an Adult, a Practical Guide to Success. We thought it might help you find some direction, Mom said earnestly. The author's a life coach who's helped lots of young adults hit their potential, Dad added. I forced a smile. Thanks. This looks helpful. As Leela launched into flight schedules and must-see landmarks, I set the book aside, its title digging into my thoughts like a splinter. Read of the gift exchange followed the usual pattern. Leela unwrapped sleek wireless headphones, a designer wallet, and a tablet. I got a planner, a gift card to a workwear shop, and a set of new food storage containers because Mom noticed mine were wearing out. At breakfast, the conversation revolved entirely around Leela's upcoming trip. I stirred my coffee, gripping my How to Become an Adult book under the table. Dinner was a masterclass in subtle family roles. Mom dishing Leela the choicest cuts of turkey, Dad offering travel budgeting tips she brushed off with a laugh, Leela describing her planned London-Paris-Rome circuit while my own year ahead sat in vague silence. When she finally turned to me with, "So, Elena, any big New Year's plans?" All eyes landed on me. "I've got a performance review in February. Might get a small raise," I said. "That's nice," Mom replied, the same tone she'd used for my middle school art projects. "But maybe you should look for something with more growth potential. You've been at Brantley and Hale 3 years now." "Nearly 4, I corrected. "Exactly," Dad said, pointing with his fork. "Ambition needs discomfort. That book might give you some great ideas." "I'm not stuck," I said quietly, pushing mashed potatoes around my plate. Sluggish Leela patted my hand like a benevolent queen. "My company's always looking for finance people. Not my kind of role, obviously, but I could get you in somewhere more dynamic." Mom beamed. "Always looking out for your sister." I excused myself early, retreating upstairs. Alone, I stared at the mocking title of that yellow book until the words blurred. On impulse, I flipped through its glossy pages, bullet points about seizing your future and bold action, mixed with cliches about leaving your comfort zone. Somewhere between irritation and insult, something else began to grow. Resolve. If my parents wanted me to grow up, then I'd do it in my own way, on my terms, and big enough that they'd never see me the same way again. By the time the house went quiet, my mind was buzzing. I sat at my childhood desk, opened my laptop, and stared at the blank search bar. If I was going to change my life, I needed to think bigger than a lateral job move in the same zip code. My network wasn't huge, but then I remembered Marisol Vega, a college friend who'd studied abroad in South America and come back transformed. While I'd headed straight for a stable accounting track, she'd gone into international development. I said it much beyond birthday texts, but her last social media post, smiling beside villagers in front of a solar panel array. She was working for a startup called Bright Horizons, tackling sustainable energy and microfinance projects. With my heart thudding, I typed out a message. "Meriores. Marisol. Long time no real talk. Saw your Bolivia project. Amazing. I'm considering a huge career change and would love to hear about your work. Any chance you're free for a quick call tomorrow?" Flooding. I hit send before I could overthink it. Flushing. 10 minutes later, her reply popped up. "Elena, I'm actually up, working late. Time zones here are wild. Want to talk now?" Into the bathroom, fan on for privacy, and dialed her number. "Mires, in my inbox at 2 a.m.? This must be big," she teased. "It is," I said, steadying my voice. "I'm ready for a real change. Not a new desk in a different office, but something completely different. Fallback. I gave her the short version. The book, Christmas, years of comparison to Leela. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "You know, this is uncanny. We just lost our financial program lead. We need someone with accounting skills to help local entrepreneurs create sustainable business models. It's a 6-month contract in La Paz. Not huge pay, but housing and travel covered." Fracking. My pulse spiked. "When would you need someone to start?" Flushing. "Yesterday," she laughed. "But realistically, within 2 weeks." Confiscated. "Can I send my resume tonight?" Flushing. "Yes, but no promises," she cautioned. "We'll need to do a quick interview." Flushing. As we hung up, I updated my resume, framing every transferable skill I could think of, and wrote a cover letter fueled by adrenaline and stubborn pride. I hit send at 3:30 a.m. By dawn, I had a spreadsheet mapping my escape. Resign from Brantley and Hale, end my lease, sell or donate nearly everything, book a one-way ticket to Bolivia. My savings, just over $19,000, would cover any gaps. At 10:57 that morning, I logged into a video interview with Marisol, a project director named Javier, and a program coordinator, Isabel. We talked about teaching basic finance to people with little formal education, adapting concepts to local culture, and operating in unpredictable environments. From calm, an hour later, my phone buzzed. "We'd like to offer you the role. Start date, January 4th. Flessing." I stared at the email, my hands trembling. This was it. The door I'd been pounding on for years without realizing it had finally swung open. Abandonment. I drafted my resignation letter, called my landlord to terminate my lease, and scheduled a pickup with a local charity for most of my furniture. The thrill of each irreversible step was intoxicating. I booked a one-way ticket to La Paz, leaving January 2nd. The last piece was telling my family. I decided to delay that conversation until everything was locked in. That night, I drafted a text. "Han, thank you for the book about growing up. I've decided to take its advice, just not in the way you imagined. I'm moving to Bolivia for a 6-month role in community development. I'm safe, I'm excited, and I'll call when I'm settled. Love, Elena." Set it to send automatically the next afternoon. 2 days later, I was back in my apartment, suitcase half packed, when the message went out. Within minutes, my phone lit up with calls, texts, and voicemails. Panic, confusion, accusations of impulsiveness. My parents had even considered calling the police. I kept my phone on silent. I knew that if I heard their voices now, my resolve might crumble. On January 2nd, I boarded the flight. My phone stayed off until we touched down in Bolivia. The moment I switched it back on, messages flooded in. 28 missed calls from my parents, 15 from Lila. Dozens of texts ranging from, "Is this a joke?" to, "We're worried sick." Called them that night from my modest one-bedroom apartment, the Andes visible in the distance. "Elena, thank God," my mother said, her voice breaking. "Are you safe? What were you thinking?" "I was thinking it was time to make a decision for myself," I said calmly. "This isn't independence," my father snapped. "It's recklessness." "It's a new start," I corrected. "You told me to grow up. I'm doing it, on my terms." Lila appeared on the screen behind them. "All this over a book? You didn't have to move continents to prove a point," I said. "It's about 25 years of never being seen for who I am. That ends now." The call spiraled. Concern, disbelief, anger, but I held my ground. I promised regular check-ins, but made it clear I was staying. In the weeks that followed, my life transformed. Bright Horizons was chaotic and challenging, nothing like my predictable desk job. I traveled to remote villages, taught basic budgeting in Spanish, learning as I went, and collaborated with people whose resourcefulness humbled me. Slowly, my parents' tone shifted during our weekly calls. My mom admitted, "You seem different, happier." Even Lila started forwarding my blog posts to her friends. 3 months in, I was offered a 2-year contract to expand our financial literacy program into 2 more countries. When I told my family, for the first time, there was no lecture, just pride.